Asia Australia brings the world's best riders to Buriram, some 400 kilometres northeast of Bangkok's bright lights. A passionate crowd is braced for a Buriram blockbuster in the PT Grand Prix of Thailand. It's all to play for with just 3 rounds remaining with the TSO Sprint next live. It's time for MotoGP. So the Chang International Circuit, 4.55 kilometres in length, just under 2.9 miles, a short, hot 40-minute flight away from Bangkok, or a 5-hour drive if that takes your fancy. 12 corners, 7 right, 5 of them left. It features a 1,000-metre straight where the MotoGP bikes approach 350 kilometres an hour in top gear, are braking in 3 corners, which also offer great overtaking hot spots. The first opportunity in the very first corner before you have the fast sweep through turn 2. Marc Marquez suffered a tumble at turn 3 in qualifying this morning. World champion Jorge Martin was down at turn 5 in a thrilling Q2 session this morning. And are we set for more Chang drama in turn 12? Turns 1, 3 and 12, well, they are the hardest braking zones around this Buriram circuit, and turn 2 and turn 3 really stress those Michelin tyres. Overtaking hot spots, well, 4 in the 12 corners give good opportunities to make the passes. This was 12 months ago. What a showdown. The 4th closest Premier Class podium in history as Martin went toe-to-toe with Bagnaia. Well, there was drama from the lights out, wasn't there? 6 days ago in Phillip Island as Marc Marquez blasted away from the front of the grid with a tear-off stuck under his front tyre. It dropped the 8-times world champion back down to 13th place in the first corner. He then produced a phenomenal fight back in Phillip Island. A great fight he had late on with world championship leader Jorge Martinez. Pecco Bagnaia had faded out of victory contention in 3rd place. This was one of several moves that Marquez made on Martin into turn 4. And after all the early drama, after the dramatic start, it was a fantastic finish down under for Marc Marquez as he took his 3rd victory in the last 6 Grand Prix. Now though, it's all eyes, it's all attention on Chapter 18 at the Chang International Circuit. That's what is turning into another epic showdown, a toe-to-toe battle with MotoGP's big heavyweights. Pecco Bagnaia, the reigning world champion, well, he's been here before, hasn't he, in 2022 and 2023, but once again he is playing catch-up. 20 points behind series leader Jorge Martin, and just to add a little bit of fuel to the fire at a baking hot Buriram. Our 2 title contenders start next to each other on the front row of the grid after a really dramatic, nail-biting Q2 session this morning here in northeast Thailand. The outcome of it was Pecco Bagnaia taking just his 4th pole position of the season with a blockbuster lap of 1:28.700. That was nearly half a second inside of Marc Marquez's all-time lap record set yesterday. Bagnaia then on pole position for the 22nd time in his MotoGP career. They are the overtaking hotspots here in Buriram. Turn 1, turn 3, turn 5 and turn 12. Turn 5 played a significant role in this morning's Q2 because it was right there where Martin crashed the Pramac Ducati when he was on a real strong lap, a potential record lap and a potential pole lap himself for the Spaniard. He got away with it really, you have to say, Jorge Martin, because that spill at turn 5 did very little damage to his grid position because he still finds himself on the front row for this 13-lap TSO Sprint coming up next here in Thailand, followed by the full feature race in just over 24 hours time, over 26 laps. So he's the most successful Ducati rider in terms of Grand Prix victories. He's now the most successful Ducati rider in terms of pole positions. Pole number 22 this morning for Pecco Bagnaia, and that was some lap. One of only 2 riders in Buriram history to lap under the 129 bracket, joined in that group by his factory Ducati teammate Enea Bastianini. Another All Ducati front row, another All Ducati GP24 front row as the Borgo Panigale factory look to continue their incredible winning record in this year's MotoGP World Championship, undefeated in the last 11 sprint and Grand Prix. But it is all eyes on Martin versus Bagnaia, a rematch of 2023. 12 months ago, they went all the way down to the final round at the Ricardo Tormo circuit in Valencia. We're at the destination of speed. Is it destination Valencia to decide who will be crowned our 2024 world champion this season in MotoGP? Matt Burton, Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box with Simon Crafar down in pit lane. Sweltering heat at the moment in northeast Thailand. Certainly the hottest conditions we've had of the weekend so far, but a heavyweight front row, Lewis. Bagnaia, Bastianini and Martin. Tough one to call this one because Martin's had great race pace, but his confidence will have taken a little bit of a knock with that late spill in Q2 at turn 5.
And it also feels as if Pecco Bagnaia made a step forward this morning in free practice too. He looked particularly good over the duration of that 30-minute session this morning, and then when the heat was on, and the heat has been on all weekend here in Buriram, it was Pecco Bagnaia who held his nerve, and it was Jorge Martin who wilted in the heat with that crash in what was a frenetic qualifying session. There were yellow flags galore in the second half of that session. You feel that's half the battle for Pecco Bagnaia, particularly in this sprint. If he can get track position early on over Jorge Martin, let Martin do the chasing, Bagnaia is a very strong position with 12 points up for grabs in this afternoon sprint and 20 the gap.
Bagnaia cannot lose more points this weekend here in Buriram. He's already on the back foot. He's already in that position of the hunter, chasing down Jorge Martin. Bastianini then goes from the front row of the grid for just the 5th time in 2024. His best starting position since his Portimao pole position all the way back at round 2. Marc Marquez alluded to yesterday, if Bastianini is fast on a Friday, well then you better watch out, because it normally means he's going to be fast throughout the weekend. Well, that has proven to be. Bastianini, a little bit of doubts about his race pace over the long distance. Let's see what he can do in the 13-lap sprint coming up shortly. Turn 3, well, there was a scare early on in Q2 at turn 3 for Marc Marquez on the rear tyre. Saved that one, but he was in hot pursuit of Martin as they both hunted pole position, an attack on a 128 themselves. Marquez went down at turn 3. He finds himself on the middle of the second row in 5th place. And a bit like Martin, Lewis, you felt like he got out of jail a little bit because neither of them really punished for those mistakes in Q2 this morning.
Yeah, he still starts in the middle of the second row, and it does feel as if the big 4 in 2024, the 4 at the top of the World Championship, the 2 battling for the ultimate prize and the 2 who are almost certainly battling for 3rd now, they are the 4 that are expecting to battle it out at the front this afternoon and tomorrow. And that's not to rule out Marco Bezzecchi, who starts 4th at a circuit that's been very, very strong for him in the past. Bezzecchi lining up in 4th place, but Marc Marquez in 5th. Expect him to be a genuine contender at the front of the field here this afternoon. He's had very good pace throughout this weekend, and as you say, he added to his already quite lengthy list of qualifying crashes this season, but wasn't punished anywhere near as much as he has been previously.
So he goes from 5th place on the grid, a 129.386. He was almost 0.7 of a second back of Pecco Bagnaia. Fabio Quartararo then won a performance by the Frenchman, 6th place on the grid with a 129.408. He was 6th fastest this morning, the 25-year-old. His equal best qualifying performance of the season from Quartararo. You do feel a 129.4 is Quartararo's ceiling. His lap time in Q1 compared to his lap time in Q2, the difference just 2 thousandths of a second. He was actually slightly faster in Q1, a session which he led ahead of Fabio Di Giannantonio. Quartararo then goes from 6th place. Excellent performance by the factory Yamaha rider. Just for reference as well, the last time Quartararo qualified in the second row was the other time this season in Mandalika, where we used that special heat-resistant, harder compound Michelin rear tyre. So the Yamaha does seem to go well with that special tyre which Michelin introduced for the abrasive and hot conditions of Lombok and Buriram.
You can't say enough good things about Fabio Quartararo's performance this morning. 6th place on the grid, the fastest non-Ducati on the grid for Fabio Quartararo, and you just saw visibly on the Yamaha this morning how hard he was pushing, saving it on his elbow as he came through the left-hander of turn 5. He was giving it absolutely everything, and certainly, as we heard from Lynn Jarvis speaking to Jack Appleyard this morning, he had no ending of respect for the job that Fabio was doing earlier on. He starts from 6th on the grid, but as I think Matt quite rightly points out, expect him to be fighting rearguard action from there rather than trying to do anything for the Ducatis up ahead of him.
Well, that was more like Matt Burt pace down the back straight there, wasn't it, as the riders go into fuel-saving mode with some brutal hard acceleration points here in Buriram, particularly on the exit of turn 1, turn 3 and turn 12. It's another fuel-thirsty circuit here, and of course over the half-distance 13-lap sprint, well, you want to be running the lowest amount of fuel as you possibly dare to carry. The helicopter shot then pans over the wonderful main grandstand here in Buriram, which gives you one of the best and most unrivaled vantage points, I think, of the entire season. And if Buriram is on your bucket list and you do eventually one day make it to this part of northeast Thailand, well, I strongly advise you take a seat in the main grandstand, because you get a view of every millimetre of this 4.5 kilometre circuit. This is the sighting lap. We're looking back to Jorge Martin. Just look, they're barely, well, they're not on the throttle, are they? They're coasting at the slowest possible speed at the field. Come to the grid then. There is your pole starter, P1 on the grid for the rider, still carrying that number 1 plate, Pecco Bagnaia. Phillip Island, last weekend, only the 3rd time this season the 27-year-old did not lead a lap over at the weekend with Aragon and in Kota. 13 Grand Prix podiums so far for Bagnaia. Done so much of his good work on Sundays, but last time out, that disappointing drop to 4th place in Phillip Island sprint. That was the 9th time in 17 Pecco Bagnaia has missed the sprint podium.
Just to show how fine the margins were this morning, we heard from Davide Tardozzi that Pecco Bagnaia didn't have enough fuel on his final one in Q2 to even do the sighting lap. They were cutting it so fine to get everything they could out of it. So what can Pecco Bagnaia do from pole position, and what will be the tactics for the Ducati Lenovo team from their 1-2 on the grid? Davide Tardozzi is on the grid with Simon.
He is. Davide, like always, got to hear your thoughts going into this sprint.
Yeah, I think that the practice shows that so many riders has a very good and fast race pace, and then can have the podium. Despite the problem of Jorge and Mark, that they crash, they are 3rd and 5th. So they both are really tough competitor for the podium. But we'll see what Pecco and Daniel can do. But again, I think that the first laps will be very important, because to overtake here with so many riders with the same race pace will be one of the problems.
Speaking of overtaking, one other question, front tyre temperature. If you're not in front, is that a worry?
Yeah, because here is very hot and very humid, especially very humid, so leading the race is much better than being behind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Davide Tardozzi. These are increasingly more nervy and more anxious, more tense moments, aren't they? Particularly when you're in the position of Jorge Martin and Pecco Bagnaia. Marc Marquez in the pre-event press conference on Thursday, a rider who's been in this position throughout his entire Grand Prix career, pretty much. He's been in this position 8 times, hasn't he, where he's gone on to win the World Championship. Marc Marquez said at this stage of the season, when you're so close to glory, you're not enjoying much of it, you are just suffering. Jorge Martin said in the build-up to this Thai Grand Prix, he's been a little bit nervous. I think Jorge Martin's probably just happier when he's on the bike. Blocks out all the distractions. It's just him, man and machine, versus the rest of the pack. How's Martin feeling then going into this 13-lap sprint? A 6-time sprint winner already so far in 2024. Desperate to build on that 20-point lead over Bagnaia in the championship. Let's get the thoughts of Primož Pramac, the Ducati boss, Gino Borsoi. Here's with Simon.
Gino, really interested to hear what you think. Watching qualifying, Jorge getting that front row time on the board, and on the second tyre, he was so fast before the mistake. Do you think he's got something extra here? Can literally jump into the lead and go?
Well, honestly speaking, we worked a lot yesterday to try to find the best balance for the sprint and for the long race of tomorrow. The pace was so good, the feeling was good yesterday and even to this morning. So, but I saw the speed of the other rider. We have no something more compared to Pecco, and Bastianini and Marquez. So could be a race for and the end will be tough.
We've seen in the past when it's hot like this, they fight for the fresh air, trying to get in front for that front tire.
Yeah, for sure. This is the key of the race today, even tomorrow. If you are in front, you have a small advantage because the pressure doesn't go up so much. If you are behind, especially if we are in a group with 4 or 5 riders, so it could be a problem for the end. But let's see. We have a strategy. Let's see if it can work in.
Thank you, Gino.
Thank you.
Shark fans, you know, thanks Simon, thanks to Gino Borsoi, the Shark fans, young and old, out in force here in Burra, and it is great to see the Shark back in action, doing a pretty good job as well, of course. This time last weekend, he was in a bit of pain and discomfort, was Pedro Acosta, that nasty high side at Siberia in the sprint, left him with stretched ligaments in the left shoulder, which are going to take some weeks to heal. Thankfully, no surgery required for the rookie. Missed the Australian Grand Prix on Sunday. Back in action though here in Burra, and once again he's the leading light at the bright start for the Pierre Mobility Group as Acosta goes from 7th place on the grid, the only KTM actually that featured in this morning's Q2.
Yeah, Brad Binder narrowly eliminated in Q1. He's not been particularly lucky with those fine margins this weekend. 1,000th of a second denied Binder Q2 yesterday, and he missed out by a slightly bigger margin in qualifying earlier on today. We're looking at Alex Marquez. He starts 9th. His teammate Marc Marquez starts 5th. Mercedes the time.
Michele, Marc's fall in qualifying didn't damage things too much, but I'm really curious what you think Marc can do in the sprint.
Yeah, luckily we stay in the second row, and I think so the target is to stay together as much as possible with the GP with 24, to don't lose the slipstream and stay with them, and we'll see.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks Simon, thanks to Michele Mazzini. Marc Marquez, you could see how frustrated he was when he took that tumble chasing Jorge Martin in Q2 at turn 3. He swung a pretty handy right hook in frustration, did the 31-year-old Spaniard, as just going through maybe the early laps, the first corners, just picturing how perfectly he hopes it will go for the World Championship leader Jorge Martin. He's got the ice pack around his neck, trying to keep himself as cool and calm and collected as he can for the 13 laps that are about to follow. Well, you have to say, in many respects, the star of this morning's Q2 was Fabio Quartararo. A brilliant save in Q1, the fastest in that opening 15-minute session, and 6th place on the grid, equaling his best starting position of the season. Let's get some pre-sprint thoughts from factory Yamaha boss Lin Jarvis.
Lin, can't believe what Fabio squeezed out, you know, in qualifying. Truly amazing. What do you think he can do in the race?
Anyway, qualification was better than our expectation, we have to say, you know, and to be finally on the front 2 rows again is great. Race will be a little bit more difficult maybe. He needs, of course, a super good start, but I think we might lose some places in the opening lap or 2. So really, he's got to just try to stay with the front group. I think his race pace is good, but the first lap and a half, we might struggle because we just don't have the speed and horsepower down the straights. Let's see.
Thank you, Lin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great qualifying. Thanks, Lin. Thanks, Simon. Great qualifying, but still a very tough proposition ahead for Fabio Quartararo. We know that the Yamaha still having its struggles to get early pace, get temperature in the rear tyres, which sounds rather silly to say, doesn't it, when we've got track temperatures approaching 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but that is the case for Fabio Quartararo. But at least he's in the game, giving himself a chance of a top ride here this afternoon. He's on that second row, which is led by Marco Bezzecchi, a former pole starter here, his first ever MotoGP pole position, coming here 2 years ago. Bez found a 129.324 this morning. A couple of tenths he was away from that front row of the grid. Can he maybe get ahead of Jorge Martin, and pick a fight with a Spaniard to maybe help out his VR46 stablemate Pecco Bagnaia in this 13-lapper.
Yeah, I'm sure if you asked him off the record, he'd perhaps put Pecco Bagnaia as his sentimental favourite for the championship. Whether he's going to be out there to help Pecco or just do his own job, only he will know. He's got his own success to try and ride for, and Marco Bezzecchi hasn't been on a sprint podium all season long, so that'll be something he'll be keen to change. Jorge Martin, of course, historically, since this sprint era began, has been the master of the Saturday afternoon showdowns, although he and Pecco Bagnaia have 6 Saturday wins apiece in 2024. If one of them can make it 7, it could be another huge moment in the chase for the title, a potential 6-point swing if they're first and second. Can Bagnaia close the gap, or can Jorge Martin extend his lead to the point where he'll be guaranteed to leave Buriram tomorrow as the World Championship leader?
You got the sense, the impression from Jorge Martin last weekend in Australia, rather uncomfortable racing the likes of Marc Marquez and Enea Bastianini at this late stage of the season, because he knows they can throw more caution to the wind. They're not fighting for the World Championship. That was clearly a factor that played at the forefront of his mind in that showdown, that duel down under with Marquez 6 days ago in that thrilling Australian Grand Prix. What part will the Beast and Marquez, and maybe a couple of others, Marco Bezzecchi, Acosta as well, coming from that third row of the grid, flies in the ointment, you feel, potentially, not just here in Buriram, but of course in Sepang and in Valencia. This is the picture-perfect way for Jorge Martin to get it set in his mind. He'd have got the ideal scenario fixated in his brain. Can he execute the mental plan when it really matters, when the flag drops and the lights go out? BMW safety car then pulls away at the front. You can just feel that there's a slightly, the further we get closer to finding out who's going to be our MotoGP World Champion in 2024, it feels like as every lap, almost as every corner passes, you can just feel the tension, the nerves just ramping up a couple of notches. Certainly is going to get ramped up here in Buriram as Jorge Martin fires away from third place on the grid after that crash at turn 5 late on in Q2 this morning. Enea Bastianini in his best starting position since round 2 in Portimao, but 20 points behind in the World Championship, trying to find a magnificent 7th sprint win of the season to try and hunt down Martin. The World Champion Bagnaia fires from pole position.